Hey guys, how's it going? It's your boy M.K.S here, back at you with part 2 of wishing all possible Indians and those of Indian origin, or those who are supporters or fans of India, allies of India and whatnot, those who love India, a happy Independence Day. Here in the UK it's 11:30 at night, so the day is nearly, technically, well, it's nearly over, let's say, to put it simply. But anyway, before I start the list of ideas, or part 2 of the list of my ideas, I would love to ask a favour. Again, I know I said this in part 1, but just in case people might have missed that, or just remind people, please do share this video and these videos out with people. In this case, let's say those from India itself, and those of Indian origin around the world, those who are supporters, fans of India, so to speak, those who have an interest in Indian culture, those from across the diaspora, people who are part Indian and whatnot. Anyone who has a connection to India, please share it with them and support my channel. I really appreciate it. And also, please share your ideas of what you think could benefit India, what India could do differently to improve or change or whatnot. So here goes. So number 11, I would love to, on that note, I'd love to see what India could change to improve or continue to improve, because I'm sure all nations have weaknesses, what things they could do better or what they could improve upon. I'd love India to become more libertarian and to ensure that animals and children and people generally as well have a good standard of living, the best possible standard of living. Me personally, I'd love to alleviate suffering generally anyway, but in this case I'd say in India I'd love to alleviate, like Indians, to work together to alleviate suffering of people and animals, especially children and the most vulnerable, how they can help the poor, how they can have more women and girls' rights, how they can treat people with disabilities better, whether it's physical, mental or learning disabilities, people with autism, dyslexia, ADHD and whatnot. I know not everyone classes dyslexia or ADHD as disabilities, like they might say learning differences instead. But yeah, so I'd love to find out. Another thing, for instance, is to find out the positive traits of neurodiversity, special needs or learning disabilities, or whatever you want to call them. In other words, people with dyslexia, ADHD, autism, dyspraxia and related conditions. I'd also love to raise the profile of Indian social media content creators, influencers, channels like T-Series, like how Indians can promote those channels, subscribe, encourage Indians as much as possible. I know T-Series does have a lot of subscribers. I hope PewDiePie, however you pronounce his name, doesn't find out about these videos, because might make some enemies, but I hope not. But so I'd love to encourage more Indians, more people of Indian origin around the world, as many as possible, to subscribe to Indian channels like T-Series, but also as many Indian YouTubers and TikTokers and whatnot as possible that support their content, their social media influence, and like maybe share ideas on Facebook and on websites as well, and things like that, support Indian websites as well as businesses and other projects to do with India, like have a real celebration of India and all things Indian, like their projects, products, helping them sell items and that sort of thing. And there was something I was thinking of before I create this video, and I thought, and I forgot it again, as I normally sort of seem to forget things and then remember them just a bit later, thankfully. But it's a bit annoying that I forget them in the first place. So, but I'm never going to forget my chain of thought again. But before I move on to point number 12, in fact, I think because that point went on quite long, I'm going to include this in point number 12 instead. So number 12, I hope for Indians to talk about what makes them proud and what they can do to encourage each other, but also for people to try Indian products maybe for the first time. For instance, people to try around the world to try Indian tea. If I was more organised and could have got this video done earlier and thought of that idea a bit earlier, I would have shared it a bit earlier, so that it could have been done today on India's Independence Day, but maybe it could be done in a few days' time or something like that if people stumble across this video. So I'd love to encourage people to try Indian tea or Indian snacks and foods, possibly for the first time if they've not done so, or even if they've done so before, or maybe even comment about what they think about Indian tea, food, and things like that, tea brands, or chai tea, basically. Me, myself, I must admit, even though I love to support India, I'm not a huge fan of Indian tea or some of the other things, but I do love Indian food, though, which is not the reason why I support them. But I do love things like paneer, which is, for those who don't know, is like a soft cheese, which is really good with naan or roti, in my opinion, as a vegetarian. India, I think half the country is vegetarian, so it has plenty of vegetarian options. But I'd love for people, as I say, around the world to try um, um, Indian snacks and foods, as I say, tea, chai, things like that, and products that come from India as much as possible, especially on this day. But as it's a bit late in the day here, so it'll probably be too late unless in some countries, if they did stumble across this video, they might just have enough time. But hopefully people will have their own YouTube challenges on their channel where they or try things where they try Indian stuff. I know some channels have probably already done that, but like where people try Indian sweets and things like snacks and whatnot. Number 13, the space for haters, I suppose. If you want to write any negative comments, I normally use number 13 as negative. So if you want to write any negative comments about myself or my channel, I suppose please feel free to. So if you must, or even about India, let's say, as we're talking about India today. But yeah, things you perhaps don't like about India, and maybe that would be a way for India to improve. But freedom of speech, as I say. So I never like to censor comments on my channel, even although I don't seem to get many comments, but it would be great to get comments. But even if they're really hateful or negative, if they're violent, I'll probably just send them to the police or whatever, those comments. But I don't want to snitch or anything like that, but for safety reasons. But yeah, I know there are some negative things about India, like violence, division, and things like that. Number 14, on that note, I think that it would be good if they address some of those negative issues, so they can look at how to improve upon those sorts of things, so they can cut back on violence and division and things like that, and solve things like global warming, climate change, and things like that together. Number 15, I'd love to see India achieve its goal of becoming a $10 trillion, $5 or even $10 trillion or more economy. I've got to admit, I don't know what size India's economy is at the moment. I think it's like $1 or $2 trillion economy, perhaps, maybe even $3 trillion, but I don't think it's higher than that at the moment. But it would be great to see what they could do to achieve even more. I think it'd be good if they could enlist, which is a big word for me, enlist, basically, to put it simply, or use it in a positive way, people from the diaspora to help to contribute to that growth, to India's growth, and help them as much as possible. One idea I had was, and I suppose I've had this idea for a while, so it's not too much of a recent idea, but I've recently re-remembered it. But it'd be cool if India could work with the international community and say that as a form of reparations, like the diaspora around the world, especially in the UK, perhaps because it was colonized by the UK, or whatever other countries colonized India. I think France might have done for a small amount of time, I'm not sure. Funny that India has the Tiranga, which I think is called the Tiranga, if I pronounce it right, which is the Indian version of the Tricolour, instead of, say, the Union Jack, which is what most countries have when they were colonized by the UK, but for whatever reason they have that one. So, but yeah, it would be cool if, and I was going to include this in part 3, but I think it'd be cool if India could, as a form of reparation, especially from the diaspora in the UK, but maybe even around the world, people could, of Indian descent, could put their donate their taxes towards India to help the economy, again, as a form of reparations, again, for the fact it was colonized. Sorry. Number 16, I'd love for there to be committees, think tanks, networks, cooperatives, especially cooperatives. I suppose is my favorite word for this sort of thing, because it means that you cooperate together, and no one's a particular leader in this case. But maybe it does need a leader, I don't know, but maybe each one person, one vote, it could be perhaps. But those with more wealth or experience or influence could perhaps have more of a say. Maybe there could be leaders in it. So maybe a network might be a better word for it. But a group of people basically who could meet together and discuss what are the best ways to benefit India and its economy, sports teams and whatnot, and basically benefit the economy and the nation as much as possible. Nation, country, whichever term you prefer. Number 17, I'd love to celebrate Indian entrepreneurs like Tata, Indian enterprises like Tata, Reliance Industries, and many others, and find out more about others. Again, if people can post them in the comments, and other such projects, engineering projects, and other projects that are done throughout the nation, which I hope will benefit India and help to raise that by helping raise their profile and that kind of thing, and benefit India in sports and all sorts of different ways. And look at the best ways to benefit India and its creatives, its social media influencers, and basically benefit the nation on the whole, as much as possible, and that kind of thing. Number 18, it'd be great if people talk about the positive things about India and Indians around the world, like their hardworking ethics. I'm not very hardworking because I'm only part Indian, as I often say. But yeah, although I'm not a hardworking person myself, I suppose I kind of do admire it, and also I do kind of think that they deserve the fruits of their labour if they work hard, unlike someone who's laid back like myself. And many of my fellow Anglo-Indians are probably quite laid back. I think people say, I'm sure there's some hard-working Anglo-Indians out there. I know I'm not one of them, but yeah, celebrating all the positive things about India, its contributions, its achievements. I'm stuck in two minds over the space program, because I think on the one hand they could use that money for better things, like helping the poor, or just basically supporting businesses. There could be business loans and things like that. That money perhaps could have been used on enterprise centres, creating more jobs, development, building unity across the country and things like that. But on the other hand, I suppose having a space program probably makes the country look better and more powerful and that kind of thing. So it probably does put it on the map in a different way. So I kind of understand why they did it. But I'd love to hear what you think, or read what you think, if I take a literally, or both, in the comment section, as I say. So please do share your comments, as I say. And what do you think about the space program? Should India have had a space program, or should it have a space program, or should it prioritize helping the poor, having animal rights, reinvesting that money into enterprise centers that it's spent in other words, instead of spending it on space programs? I'd love to read what you think about that. Number 19, I'd also love for India to support software development for Indigenous Africans and or Australasians. And number 20, also STEM generally, and for both older and younger people, or people of all ages, to respect each other and look at what they can learn from each other and how they can give each other the best possible lives, help to make each other happier. I mean, I know people might say sometimes you need to discipline children when they do something bad, to teach them things, but I still think they should always try and do that do whatever's best in their children's long-term interest to help them for longer term. But again, I'd love to hear what you think about each of these points. Do you think it is important to respect the elderly, or do you think everyone should be respected equally? And do you think that, or do you think, even rather controversially, that you should respect the young instead? I can't imagine too many people would say that, but I think you should respect everyone equally, old or young. In fact, if anything, I'd probably support young people more, if I'm honest. But I suppose if people become old and infirm, elderly and infirm and stuff like that, I suppose they need help, just as I do and will in the future, I'm sure. Depending on how long I live and that kind of thing, I'm sure I need help in the future, so I should be careful what I say. But as ever, I like contrarian thinking. Like something I heard recently said you should be good to your children because they'll decide what old people's home you go to. So I like that sort of thinking, because most people say you should be good to your parents, whereas this said the opposite. So I thought it was pretty interesting. Again, I love contrarian thinking, challenging conventional wisdom or things like that. I've probably gone a bit off track, but yeah, please let me know what you think, especially those living in India and those of Indian descent and those who love India. But all comments, as ever, welcome, including haters' comments if you must comment. Anywho, I'm going to leave it on a positive. Peace and love.